Hi, I'm Helen Bauer, and this is the Heart of Hospice podcast. The Heart of Hospice podcast is your source for compassionate and informative discussions about hospice and end-of-life care. I'm a certified hospice and palliative care nurse with over 15 years of experience. Whether you're a caregiver, someone with a serious illness, or you simply need to know more about hospice care, this podcast is for you. Join me as we explore all the aspects of hospice, from the details of caregiving to the emotional and spiritual dimensions of end-of-life journeys. For more resources and to connect with me, visit theheartofhospice.com and find us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Keep listening for today's episode.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
This episode is sponsored by GrandPad. GrandPad is the all-in-one tablet designed especially for senior adults. With GrandPad, you get safe, simple video calling and photo sharing. Users can create a private family network that allows for secure photo and video sharing. The GrandPad utilizes a simple format that allows seniors to enjoy games, music, email, and more. Visit our special GrandPad website designed exclusively for the Heart of Hospice listeners at grandpad.net/THOH.
We're turning the podcast upside down today with my special guest, hospice nurse and death doula, Gabby Jimenez of the Hospice Heart. Gabby, I am so happy to have you back on the show. Welcome.
It is so much fun to be here today. The tables are turned a little bit, but it's still you and me, and I love that.
I'm so glad we're doing this, and it's going to be a little bit weird. I have to tell you, I'm a little bit nervous, but it's so good to see you. We haven't connected in a long time, but you've been on the show so many times. Today you're going to be taking over as host. So, okay, I am ready for my
Interview.
Yeah. I'm used to asking all the questions, so today you get to ask me. We will see how this works.
All right, give me a second. I need to put my interviewer hat on.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'd be the hostess with the mostest. I'm a little curious to see how we're going to handle this.
We got this. All right. Clear my throat. I'm going to get ready. All right. Welcome, Helen Bauer of Hospice Navigation Services. It's really nice to have you here today.
Well, thank you, Gabby. I'm so glad to be with you.
So, Helen, you and I have a bit of a past. I think the first time that I met you was in 2018 or 2019, which was one of my very first podcast interviews, which was kind of exciting. And over the years, we've had many. I went back and I looked at all of them. We've got quite a little history there.
We do.
And because of this, I've had the opportunity to get to know you. And I'm listing here some things that I know are important to you. Your family, your friendships, your dog, Sunny, and the work that you do. And one of the things that I have had the honor of experiencing, even though you were interviewing me, was from my perspective, watching your passion and compassion and excitement for this work that we both do. And knowing that you've now started in this offering this service I see your passion being elevated, and I love that. I love what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's so true. So I probably should add some details about this, things that are important to me, my family, obviously, and my dog, Sunny, because so Sunny is very special. He and I are a registered therapy animal team. So we are actually hospice volunteers, he and I together. And we have a few patients that we see. So I do have a little bit of an abnormal attachment to my dog. But he's the kind of dog that has purpose. He works, he gets joy out of engaging with people. So yeah, that is something I am very passionate about.
I love that. I love that you get to do that with him. And, I can appreciate the obsession with our pets. Just this morning, I said to my cats, "Hey, you guys, did you know it's your birthday tomorrow?" And they looked at me like, "Just give us our food," but I
Yes.
have these questions with them all the time. And I think how lovely actually, you just kind of brought up a memory. They are not service animals, and they've never, they don't do the work that Sunny gets to do. But when they were little kittens, I had a patient who had a brain tumor and he was bedridden. And I had just gotten the kittens, and his wife asked if I could bring them over to let him play with them. And I did. I brought them over and they climbed around on his bed, and I watched his face, just being able to see them and play with them. And so I imagine that must be what you feel all the time.
Yeah. Having Sunny do this work with me, or actually he does the work. I'm basically the dog Uber driver because I will walk into a facility and everybody greets Sunny. Hardly anybody says hello to me. I've gotten used to that. But to watch him do the work is so much fun. It doesn't feel like work to me. And it is his natural ability to engage and comfort and seek closeness to someone. And people say, "Oh, well, how did you train him to do that?" And I'm like, I didn't train him to do that. He was born that way. Yeah. We trained him on the obedience skills, the people skills, basically. But the engagement and how he interacts with people, that's just all Sunny.
The heart.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's wonderful to watch him do it.
Wow. We could do a whole podcast just on them.
I know, right? He would have to be part of it. And he may still actually be part of it. He may decide to come up here and say hi to me.
Oh, well, perfect. He's welcome. So, Hospice Navigation Services. I'm going to read a little quote that I found on your page. Hospice Navigation Services provides support for anyone who needs information about end-of-life care, patients, families, caregivers. So, first question for you today. You are already very active in creating a platform which offers many resources for end-of-life care. But I think you and I can both agree that there is a lot missing for people who are dying and for those who are caring for people who are dying. Is this maybe what might have motivated you to start this service?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we've had the podcast platform, right, for almost 10 years now. But when I thought about the needs that people have when they need information about hospice care, a lot of times they need one-on-one help. They have specific questions. They're grieving, and they need a little bit of everything, a one-stop shop. And that's what Hospice Navigation Services provides. And because it's accessible by phone or by video, it's all across the United States. You can call and we can have a session from anywhere, which is great. It makes it super accessible. But I think people need unbiased, individualized information, not coming from a hospice agency, not coming from a marketer or a contact person or a community educator or liaison, but somebody with experience in end-of-life care who can provide unbiased information, not trying to sell you anything, but a better experience. So that's how the navigation services. Plus, I'd been doing that informally for family and friends and coworkers for years. Every hospice nurse, anybody who works in healthcare gets those calls, right? Can you tell me what this rash is? They've referred my grandmother to hospice. What should we expect? Well, what you should expect is that somebody should have already told you what to expect. But here, let me give you those answers.
That goes right to my next question, which I think, that it could probably have its own podcast as well. But what do you feel is most lacking right now? Like you and I both experienced this. The person comes onto hospice and the family still doesn't know certain things. There is a common disconnect for the families. So if you could, I know this could take a long time, so try to shorten this, but what do you feel is most lacking as far as the information that is passed on to the family, not the patient, but the caregivers?
That is a big question. It's a good one. And I would say that it's not just the information, the lack of information that's given to the family, it's the timing of when it's given to them. So I think that's what it is. There's definitely a lack of information about what to expect and how to get the best care. Because if you don't know what to expect and you're grieving, you're sad, you're struggling financially, you're a caregiver, you may work outside the home, you may be a live-in caregiver or even a remote caregiver. It's exhausting to try to be an advocate to gather information. And we don't hand it to people when they need it ahead of the need.
Oh, I can't agree with you more. I am finding that, and this is just the way that I do things, but I think we're similar in that regard. Whenever I see a patient, if I can, in that very first visit with them, I will try to give them as much as I possibly can in that visit, because we can't predict what's going to happen or how long it will take. I don't want to walk out there and that night have something happen that I didn't prepare them for. And I think that's common across the board. So if we can provide them ahead of time what to expect, even the most difficult of things, then we can make this journey easier for them.
I agree. And especially since the majority of hospice patients, so many of them are with us 2 weeks or less. 2 weeks or less. So you're looking at that 5-day start window where we get everything rolling. And then for stable patients, things settle down and the visits, drop back to a less frequent visit schedule. But then they're still living with this and moving, and it may move very quickly. And it's true, a lot of times we don't get the opportunity to create trust and have time to teach because it really takes more than one session. It's drinking from a fire hose from the very beginning.
So when I train new nurses, one of the things that I tell them often is to imagine this is your only opportunity with this person. What 5 things do you think they should know, right? That's what I send them off with, because I want them to at least leave with something. I think that's really important. And it brings me to one of the offerings that you have is a complimentary 30-minute call. And this actually is a good question based on what we were just talking about. I want to know, like, for someone who's listening right now, right? They're thinking, okay, so now they know what our message is, what our intention is. With a 30-minute call, which is free, what does that entail? What is your, how do you set that out? What is your intention with that 30-minute call?
Well, there are a couple of different purposes for the 30-minute call. The first one is when you're just seeking information and you don't know what you don't know. And so that 30-minute call is a good way to get started. And that way, when you want to have the 60-minute call and really dig in deep to some details when you know a little bit more about what you want to ask, that complimentary call is a great way to set that up. The other way the complimentary 30-minute call is used is for people that really have an urgent need. For instance, I had a caller that I worked with who said, I've got an elderly parent. The caregiving situation is very fragile because my other parent is the primary caregiver and also is in poor health. The physician is pushing us, even though I have asked for hospice and a referral several times, pushing us away from hospice care, saying it's not needed, pushing procedures and things like that. She said, this is not a good fit and I can't sustain it. Can you help me figure out how to look for a hospice agency in my area? So we never recommend a single hospice agency, never. We never want to pull the rug out from under a patient's right to choose which agency is the best fit for them. But I can show you where to look, how to understand the star ratings, the data that's out there, and find who services that area where the patient lives. And so that 30-minute phone call was used to help this caller find an agency, actually find 3 agencies that were the top listed in her area so that she could find services for her dad.
I think of the 30-minute call as sort of an aha moment for the person on the other end, right? They're like, oh, I didn't think about that. Or, oh,
Right.
I know someone that can help me with this. I mean, so who would benefit from the 30-minute call? Putting aside the patient, who else would benefit from this call?
Anybody who is a stakeholder in providing care for someone with a serious illness can benefit from a 30-minute call. Because when you're just hearing a suggestion from a care provider, a physician, nurse practitioner about the possibility of hospice, you can go out and get information for yourself. A 30-minute navigation call is a great way to do it. It's a great way to do it. Basically to get basic information about the philosophy of hospice and what the team looks like. So you at least have some working knowledge to go back with. So if you are already a caregiver and you are interested in hospice, but the team has not suggested it, the healthcare team has not suggested it, you can get information during a 30-minute session that will help you go to your physician or your care team and say, this is what I know about hospice and I think this is where we are. Let's start talking about this. It's really just another tool in your toolbox as a caregiver to help you provide better care when and if it's needed. And there are some 30-minute calls that a caregiver might have with me for a navigation session, and they realize that's not where we are yet. This isn't a good fit yet. He's in a study. We're still seeking treatment. He's not ready to forgo dialysis. So those are good conversations to sort of help you decide whether this is the timing for hospice or not.
I get a lot of calls actually from people who have a friend who is going through something. Like my friend is going through this and I just want to get some information for her. This would be a really great opportunity for them as well, because there is so much unknown, and you're not making it personal. You're not making it about a specific patient, their diagnosis and what they're going through. So really anyone with curiosity, whether it's personal or a friend of theirs, they could go to you and get quite a bit of information in that session.
They absolutely could. And I think if you are a family member or a friend of someone who has gone on to hospice and you don't understand the care that they're receiving, you don't understand the timing of it or why they decided to stop treatment and how it works with hospice and palliative care, a 30-minute call can explain a lot of how end-of-life care works, and also to dispel some of the myths that the public has in general about what hospice does.
So now that I've heard that, and I also know that you offer the 60-minute session, which it does cost $95, which is a very good offering, and it's phone or video.
Right.
Personally, just based on what you just shared, I'd probably just go for the 60-minute session because I think now I want more, right? So how does the 60-minute session exceed or add to the 30-minute?
During a 60-minute session, there's a lot more time for questions and answers, for one thing. We take a deeper dive into specifics. One of the ways a 60-minute call can be utilized is for someone who's already in hospice care, receiving hospice care, and they want to troubleshoot a question or a concern. So we don't give medical or legal advice during a navigation session. I can tell you what best practice is and what questions you should ask, but I can tell you what good care should look like, what you should be able to expect. So I think if you are experiencing care that may be subpar, or you have questions about whether this is what you should be getting, a 60-minute session is a good time to troubleshoot an issue. It's really about advocacy.
Absolutely. And I feel like the person coming to you is going to be guided on how to navigate these next few days or weeks, but to also utilize hospice in the way that would benefit their person with a little more clarity. You're giving them the tools to better advocate for their person,
Right.
which they might not have had.
This is some serious on-the-job training. Can you imagine, as a caregiver, you've never experienced hospice personally? You don't work within the healthcare system, which just by itself is baffling, right? We have an industry that is taking care of a very human experience, our health. And it's the same thing for hospice care. It's a business. And we have to acknowledge the business side of things. And so sometimes that doesn't make sense with providing care for someone. And so we are asking these caregivers to absolutely trust everything we're telling them, and that we know what we're doing, and we know what a good fit, a good death is going to look like for your person. And a lot of times they go along because they don't have the energy for it. They don't have the emotional bandwidth, the education. They don't speak the healthcare language. They don't have the time.
So someone's thinking about signing up, right? I think if you're coming, like you and I have the tools, the experience, we probably have a good idea of what we would ask someone like you.
Right.
But let's say you're a person who's never experienced this, and you're going to sign up for one of these 60-minute sessions. What should they do to come prepared? Like, is there a few questions you can say that they, suggest that they ask? How can they be prepared to really utilize this time with you?
Well, we have a questionnaire for anybody who registers and purchases or signs up for a complimentary session or a 60-minute session, a questionnaire that allows them to share some information about their person. We do not collect any names or dates of birth or anything like that, because we are not, this is not healthcare documentation, right? We want a general overview about the situation, the diagnosis, the health problems that they struggle with the most. And then there's a section that says, list 3 questions or 3 areas you'd like to address during your navigation session. And this allows people to sort of decide what their priorities are. Like, I just need to know what the basic team and the care looks like. What can I expect from that? Some people go a little bit further. How often can I expect them to visit? Will they be here when my loved one dies? Things like that. How will they support me when my loved one begins to actively die? And is there any way to get out of hospice if we don't like it? What if we don't like the agency that we have? What do we do about that? So those are questions inside the questionnaire. They can list, whatever is appropriate for them, whatever their top priorities, things that are most concerning for them. And if they're troubleshooting a hospice experience that they're currently receiving, the care that they're getting already, to list what we've had a nurse that we have a concern about due to this and this. What can we do about this? So the questionnaire comes to us before the navigation session starts. And the reason we think this is so important is because we don't want to waste your purchased navigation time on a big bunch of backstory. If you can send it to us ahead of time, then I come prepared to the conversation just as you come prepared to the conversation. That way we make the most of your navigation session and we don't waste your time.
Well, I guess that's really where I wanted to get to, was how do you initiate that conversation? So by doing that, they're giving you the tools to be able to help them directly, rather than trying to beat around the bush, trying to get to the topic that they're really most focused on. I think that's wonderful. And it also makes things easier for them too, because this is so daunting. This whole experience is daunting, and what they're going through, and there's so much uncertainty and so much unknown and so much curiosity. And to be able to have this service is going to make things different, and I don't want to use the word easier, but maybe to be able to go through it and move through it with a little more ease because of it.
Yeah.
So I think that's really wonderful. Thank you for sharing that part, because I think that's really significant here.
Well, and if it does make it a little bit easier for somebody along the way, then absolutely, that's one of the purposes of a session to begin with. We're going to break for just a minute. This isn't the end of the episode. There's more to come, so stay connected.
If you're looking for an easy solution to stay connected to your older loved ones, GrandPad is everything you need. It's the all-in-one tablet designed especially for seniors. With GrandPad, you get safe, simple video calling and photo sharing to connect the whole family. The GrandPad utilizes a simple format that allows seniors to enjoy games, music, email, and more. GrandPad comes with 4G LTE cellular service already included, so there's no need for Wi-Fi. Users can create a private family network that allows for secure photo and video sharing. At the core of the GrandPad team are the Grand Advisors, a group of seniors that continually inspire, test, and guide the development of GrandPad. The company has built a platform that empowers seniors of all ages and technological skills to safely connect with family, friends, and caregivers. No spam, no robocalls, only connections with those you trust. The GrandPad team strives to create a world where no senior is lonely or isolated. It's the smart choice to keep older adults connected. Visit our website today at grandpad.net/THOH or call 1-888-904-4723. GrandPad, keeping seniors connected.
So I found two things on your site that I wanted a little more information about. One is the free bonus resources, and the other is taking care of your whole self. So let's start with free bonus resources. What does that mean? What is this? Is it an offering that is available to anyone? What is this? What is this all about?
Well, when people go in and sign up to be connected with the Heart of Hospice, because that's part of Hospice Navigation Services, they get a free download, which is this wonderfully curated, I think, we had input from several different experts, wonderfully curated resource about end-of-life care. Some basic information about team structure and what the different people on the team do for the patient and the family. Information about how to decide whether it's time to start the conversation. Different things you can look for that would indicate maybe hospice care is indicated at where your person is in their disease trajectory. I believe there's also a section on self-care there for the caregiver, because caregivers and patients both are a priority for hospice teams. And really, a person who is ill is affected primarily, right? Physically, mentally, and emotionally. The caregiver is also affected in the same way. And that's mind, body, spirit for the caregiver as well. So we feel like we give this resource. It's free. You can print the page that is the checklist for, are these things happening? So is this maybe the time to talk about hospice? And that's all there.
And is that also does that fall into also the category of self-care, taking care of your whole self?
That is an additional download that we send for free to anybody who books a navigation session. And we're talking about body, mind, and spirit. Are you taking care of yourself? How does it affect you emotionally and mentally? How does it affect the relationships that you have? The relationship with your loved one, who, by the way, may not even be a loved one. May be a friend, maybe somebody you don't even like all that much, somebody who's got a long history with you that's kind of shaky, but yet you're still a caregiver. And want to sort of remind you, you matter. You matter. Your health matters. All of your health matters. So it's a reminder with some suggestions about how you can best take care of yourself while you're doing this care for your person.
Wow, those are two really important offerings. And because it is downloadable, they can go back to it whenever they want to.
Absolutely.
I love that. So, question about our mortality. Working in this field has all of us questioning our own mortality. Did that influence your passion to start Hospice Navigation Services?
I think it did. I think it did. So when we talk about working as an end-of-life professional, an end-of-life worker, we talk about how we identify with certain deaths. Certain things trigger us. This patient reminds me of my grandmother. Or my mom passed away with this same diagnosis a few years ago. But in truth, every single death that we experience as end-of-life workers is relatable because it's another human being. We are all finite. And so every patient death is relatable. So it's easy to put yourself in that person's shoes, in that caregiver's shoes. At least it is for me, to be able to empathize and understand that my situation might look a little different, but it will be the same at some point in my life. And so when I think about moving through a journey like that as a caregiver, so I have a 91-year-old mother who has dementia that has gotten progressively more severe over the last year. And my father, who was recently diagnosed with dementia as well. To be able to relate to those experiences and know that there may come a day when I need somebody to provide me with a hospice navigation session, to help me with questions about things and help me figure out what to do as a caregiver. I think that's really what drives Hospice Navigation Services. Knowing that this is a lifeline for somebody, that I hold some information, some education, some support, maybe even words of encouragement to help a caregiver get through this and figure it out. And, oh, by the way, at the end of things, be able to put a head on the pillow and say, man, I really did everything I wanted to do for my person. And I did it well. So yeah, I think my personal experiences and how the last 15 years of hospice work have shaped me, all of that goes into the navigation sessions.
As you were talking, I was thinking about my own personal experience with my brother. You know, you and I talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
I sat at his bedside for 18 days, a hospice nurse, an end-of-life doula, so much experience, right? And yet I felt completely unprepared. And I think about how even those of us in this field and all that we know and all that we have experienced, we need guidance and support too. And I think that this offering, the Hospice Navigation Services, isn't just for someone who has experienced a personal loss. It can be very much for someone who still has the tools, but also needs guidance. I could have used guidance at that bedside. And maybe it could have been something like, Gabby, you know how to do this, right? Or Gabby, what would you do? You know, maybe just somebody that would sort of redirect things for me so I can see it from a different perspective. I think I would have benefited at that time had I reached out to you.
Mm.
I would not have known that if we hadn't had this conversation now.
But I think that it's so different to experience from that other perspective. It sort of flies in the face of what you know. Because I remember, so I was the medical power of attorney for a friend who had been undergoing treatment for cancer. And she became suddenly incapacitated, couldn't make any decisions. And so the medical power of attorney kicked in and I was making her decisions without having had any conversations with her about her end-of-life wishes. Who the hell does that? It was crazy. And I think actually a lot of people across the United States do that, right? You're flying blind because there's no advanced care planning. But I remember she was in the ICU and we had chosen hospice. I had chosen hospice. And she needed to go out of the ICU. And I called a friend of mine and I said, oh my God, what am I going to do? I have no idea. And the relationship with the doctor was poor. It was just an on-call hospitalist, didn't know her, didn't know me. And it was a terrible experience. And I'm like, oh, I'm so angry. And I have no idea where to send her. Where's she going to live? She can't take care of herself, complete bedbound. What am I going to do with this? And this person, who's another end-of-life professional, said, well, there's an inpatient unit where she would qualify to receive general inpatient level of care for hospice. And I was like, well, dang, I knew that. But at the time, I couldn't access that information because the hospice nurse was not in charge. The part of my brain that was in charge was the frontal lobe with the emotions and the monkey brain that was like, I'm in a panic. What do I do with all this? And that's exactly what I needed, was to call up Gabby Jimenez at the Hospice Heart and say, hey, I'm going through this and I cannot even begin to fathom how to care for her. What do I need to do? And then to have somebody say, okay, you know how to do this. The first thing is let's find her a place to live.
Sort of the voice of reason.
Yeah. Somebody just to sort of recenter you and remind you what you already know. It's not a bad thing.
I think that we have to be reminded that we are all human and that it's okay to say, I'm not okay. I need support. And I think I would have benefited from support from someone that could remind me what I know.
Yeah.
Because you go into this blank place and so you think that about someone like you and me who have the skills. So that blank space, right? Imagine how big it is for someone who doesn't. So I personally just want to say thank you for what you do here, because I really think that it is far more beneficial than people realize, and it's something that we could all utilize.
Thank you. That's so kind.
Yeah, I'm really glad we're having this conversation. So you've been doing this for a little while now. You've taken calls, you've worked with people. I want to know if you can share a brief story about someone who has reached out to you and how you might have helped them. Maybe just from what the initial conversation was to the outcome. Do you feel that you made a difference for them? And what did that feel like for you?
It always feels good. I have to say that. It always feels great to know that I've helped somebody with a navigation session. So I had a young woman reach out to me. Both her parents were fairly elderly. Her father had Alzheimer's, which is a challenging hospice diagnosis, because determining where a person is in that disease trajectory can be tricky. And physicians a lot of times don't know what end-stage requirements are for hospice appropriateness. Sometimes referrals get made too early because they just want to add extra help in the home. And I think a lot of times there are more caregiving needs than there are healthcare needs. So this young woman called, and that's where they were. Her father could still walk, but he was falling. He could still talk, but he was severely confused. And she just wanted to know if hospice would even help with caregiving responsibilities, have caregiver hours that would be helpful for her mom. And of course, Medicare hospice benefits do not cover that type of caregiver support. And as it turned out, really, her father probably wasn't appropriate for hospice. But she wanted information so that if she went to her dad's doctor, she could have a knowledgeable conversation. Have some basic information about what they would be entitled to and the kind of help that they could get, so she could maybe have a more productive conversation with a physician. But she was really just information seeking, and she said, I don't know anything about this. I'm an only child. I'm so alone. My mom is overwhelmed, and she's elderly, and she's trying to take care of my dad. And I live in another state. She said, I'm flying back and forth. And so I had this lengthy conversation with her, pointed her in the right direction, connected her with some good resources. And I reminded her, you're more than capable of doing this. You've got the basic working knowledge, and 90% of it is the fact that you want to help your parents and you have your dad's best interest at heart. You can't beat that. You can't lose if you go into it with that. And I actually don't know if they ever got hospice on board. Her mother was reluctant to have the hospice conversation. She was a little bit scared of it. And so I don't know what the outcome of that was. We just did the one session. But she was so grateful just to feel like she was a little more confident, a little more competent to have the conversations, and that she was a better caregiver for her parents. She really felt anxious about letting them down, especially as an only child. That's a lot of burden to feel as an only child.
So what you do is you take the hand of a person who is terrified and you say to them, we've got you. You're not there when the last breath is taken, and that's okay. You give them the tools to be comfortable and confident doing the work themselves.
Right.
That's big. So now do you ever like do a follow-up letter? I mean, would you consider doing that? Maybe just, hey, I really appreciated our call. I just want to check in and see how you're doing.
I do. I send an email, a follow-up email, just saying thank you for booking your session. It's great to talk to you. I also will include online resources if there's something that I feel like would be beneficial for them, based specifically like the woman whose dad had Alzheimer's. I connected her with the ALZ, Alzheimer's Association website, and said, you might want to look for a support group in your area, maybe for people that were younger, because she was a younger woman in her early 40s, I think. So I send resources like that. And I also remind them, we're still here. If you just book the one complimentary phone call, we only offer one complimentary call per caregiver, right? Per caller. But we're happy to do a deeper dive. If things get more intense or you find out you have more questions, we're happy to do another call with you. And here's where you can reach us. So, yeah, I try to make sure we follow up with people so they know it's not just that we dumped all this information on you and you're out there on your own. We're still here. You can check back if you need us.
I want you to think about this for a second. If you think of this service that you offer, Hospice Navigation Services, you've been doing it for a little while now. You've had this vision. We're watching it come to fruition. You've helped many people. If you could think of just 4 words that would best represent what you offer, or what your philosophy is, what your intention is, what would those 4 words be?
I would say quality. I would say comfort. I would say empower. And I would say compassion.
Those are great words.
Yeah.
You and I have been talking for many years now about this work, and we always seem to come to that same place, which is about honoring the human being when they are dying,
right,
and when they're grieving. Our intention has never changed. I feel like even though we've had multiple conversations, I feel exactly the same right now with you as I did back in 2018 or 2019 when we had our first one, which is our intention is to help improve the way people are cared for when they die. And it truly does start with letting them know what resources are available to them. And I, for one, just feel like this is a resource that could be utilized in so many ways. I really love that you have started this. I think you could make a significant difference in the lives of people who are providing end-of-life care.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think so too. I think so too. We, designing the sessions, we thought, what would be the easiest? What would be the most valuable to people? You know, to be able to ask questions, to be comfortable. You can do it on a phone call from your car if that's all you have space for. A 60-minute call can include more than one person. So if you've got family members in different places, we can have that conversation. Everybody get the same information at the same time. We can talk about advanced care planning. You know, there's so many different aspects of end of life. And so since the first time you and I talked back in 2019, we've had a pandemic. We've had political unrest, global unrest. We've grieved as a country over you know, how many thousands and thousands and thousands of deaths from COVID. And yet, end-of-life care remains the same. End of life is the same. People still die. We know we want to be seen. People want to be heard. They need support. People don't want to be alone for this. And so those basic needs are something we try to meet with the navigation services.
All right. You have a person who's just found out that her husband is dying, and she's the sole caregiver. And she's got this news, and she's just like sitting there. If you could talk to her right now, what would you say to her?
I would tell her, I'm here with you. I will get this started together, and I'll walk with you. It's okay to have questions. It's okay to ask every one of them, and it's okay to ask those questions over and over again if that's what you need. You should expect good care. You should expect answers. Know that it might not be 100% like what you envision in your mind, but you can do this, and it's worth doing.
Helen Bauer of Hospice Navigation Services, thank you very, very much for what you offer and for taking this time with me to share more about it. I feel like this is something that I would want to refer to the people that come to me with questions. And I don't just refer anyone, so I hope you know that. Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk with you, and again, for what you are offering.
Thank you so much, Gabby. Thanks for listening to the Heart of Hospice podcast. Check out our sponsor in the show notes, and please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. We would appreciate it if you would share this episode with your friends and family and anyone who needs to know more about hospice. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.